Imagine paying for VIP seats, only to be told you're not the right type for them. Two black teens faced this humiliation mid-flight, but what the crew didn't know, their father wasn't just any passenger. He was the CEO of one of the airline's biggest partners. What happened next? It shook the entire airline industry. Stay tuned, because this is one call you won't believe, and it changed everything. Subscribe for more real-world stories of justice and empowerment. Every now and then, a story comes along that reminds us what dignity, preparation, and quiet strength look like. That story begins with two teenagers, Jordan and Mia Carter, brother and sister, 17 and 16 years old. High schoolers, yes, but not your average ones. Jordan, the older of the two, is the kind of young man every parent dreams of raising. Captain of his varsity basketball team, National Honor Society, a quiet leader with a 4.2 GPA, a sharp wit, and a humble spirit. He was recently accepted into a top engineering program with a full scholarship. And then there's Mia, driven, focused, fierce on the debate team, and beloved by her community for organizing youth-led voter registration drives. She dreams of becoming a civil rights attorney, and with her record, there's no doubt she'll make it. Straight A's, fluent in 2 languages, and already leading panels at youth conferences across the country. Footage: Jordan tossing a basketball in slow motion, Mia speaking at a podium, both walking with backpacks toward the airport security. This week was special. They were both invited to attend an exclusive National Leadership Summit in New York City, a rare, invite-only event that brings together the best and brightest young minds from across the U.S. CEOs, senators, innovators. They would be rubbing shoulders with powerhouses. Jordan and Mia were selected not just for their grades, but for their impact. Their presence mattered. And behind them, cheering every step of the way, was their father, Mr. Malcolm Carter, a self-made tech CEO who built a multi-million-dollar logistics firm from the ground up. A man who knew what it meant to be overlooked, underestimated, and doubted, and made sure his children would never shrink themselves to make others comfortable. Footage: elegant black man in a suit seeing his kids off, hugs and smiles. He watches proudly as they enter security. Narrator: Mr. Carter didn't spoil his kids. No, but he did believe in rewarding effort, discipline, and purpose. And so, as a small gesture of pride, he upgraded their tickets from economy to first-class VIP, complete with lounge access, premium meals, and reclining leather seats. Not just because he could, but because he believed they deserved to experience excellence. And honestly, Jordan and Mia earned it. The night before the flight, they were buzzing with excitement. Mia laid out her business blazer, Jordan ironed his button-up. They even rehearsed how they'd introduce themselves to corporate leaders at the conference. That's the kind of energy they brought to the table. Teens packing, choosing outfits, laughing at the kitchen table with their dad. The morning of the flight, they woke up early. No alarm needed. Dressed clean, sharp, and confident, they arrived at the airport with time to spare. Heads turned, not just because they looked good, but because they carried themselves with presence. Kind, polite, but sharp. You could just tell they were raised right. They breezed through security, stopped at the lounge for a light breakfast, then made their way to the gate. Everything was going smoothly. Gate agents scanned their boarding passes, VIP class, row 1A and 1B. A few other passengers glanced over, curious. After all, it's not every day you see 2 young black teens in first class without a parent trailing behind. Footage: Jordan scanning his boarding pass, Mia smiling as she walks down the jet bridge, cutting to the plush seats. As they settled into their plush leather seats, the cabin still quiet, Jordan looked over at Mia and smiled. "We made it, huh?" She grinned back, taking in the seat controls, the welcome drink menu, and the soft blanket folded beside her. "We're just getting started," she replied. And in that moment, all was right. 2 exceptional kids, soaring into their future, just like their father had always dreamed. Footage slows, fades to black briefly with a soft musical shift, suspense creeping in. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have expected, was that some people still couldn't see past the color of their skin, that in the eyes of a certain flight attendant, excellence had a look, and apparently, Jordan and Mia didn't fit it. Because just minutes after takeoff, their dream trip would take a sharp turn, and by the time the plane touched the ground again, the entire crew would be out of a job. Cut to black screen. Single line of text. It all started with a simple question. Are you sure these are your seats? The plane had barely reached cruising altitude. Jordan and Mia were quietly settled into their seats, headphones in, tray tables down. Jordan was reading an article on leadership styles. Mia had a leather-bound journal open, jotting down ideas for the panel she'd speak on the next day. They weren't making noise, weren't drawing attention, just enjoying the experience their father had proudly gifted them. Cut to a sharply dressed flight attendant stepping into the frame. Her smile looks practiced, but her eyes scanned the teens suspiciously. That's when she appeared. A flight attendant, mid-40s, blonde bob, crisp uniform, approached their row with a clipboard in hand and a look that said more than words ever could. Her smile was tight, strained, the kind people use when they've already decided something about you. She didn't ask if they wanted a drink, didn't welcome them aboard. She didn't even look at their boarding passes. Instead, she leaned in, looked Jordan square in the eye, and said, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear, I'm going to need you two to move. These seats are reserved for important guests. Footage. Tension in the air. Nearby passengers look up. One older woman frowns in confusion. Important guests. That was the phrase. It hung in the air like a slap. Mia looked up from her journal, stunned. Jordan took out one earbud and blinked, trying to process what he'd just heard. He sat up a little straighter. I'm sorry, these are our assigned seats, he said calmly, pulling out his phone and showing the boarding pass. Seat 1A and 1B. No mistakes. The flight attendant didn't even glance at it. Instead, she crossed her arms and doubled down. Sir, I need you to move now. These seats are for premium travelers. I'm sure you'll be more comfortable in the back. Cut to Mia glancing around, faces turning toward them, a white man in business attire looking away awkwardly. Now the murmurs started. Other passengers were watching, some confused, some clearly uncomfortable. One woman 2 rows back even leaned forward and whispered to her husband. They were here first. Footage. Jordan keeping calm, Mia visibly uncomfortable, biting her lip. Jordan stayed composed. His tone didn't rise. He didn't argue, but you could see the shift in his eyes. That quiet understanding, the realization that this wasn't about a mix-up. This was about assumption. He politely repeated, Ma'am, I believe there's some misunderstanding. We purchased these seats. My father arranged them personally, but the attendant wasn't backing down. In fact, she was growing more hostile. She took a step closer, looked down at them like they were unruly children, and snapped. Unless you can prove that your father is a platinum member or a company executive, I need you to move. Cut to Mia closing her journal slowly, her lips pressed together tightly. Now let's pause here. Imagine you're 16 years old. You've done everything right. You're sitting in the seat you paid for, politely explaining yourself, and someone in a position of power, someone paid to serve and protect passengers, is openly questioning your right to simply exist in that space. Mia's fingers tightened around her pen. She didn't speak, not yet. She was raised to pick her moments carefully. But the anger? It was there. You could see it in her shoulders. The restraint of a young black girl trained to stay respectable, even while being disrespected. Footage. A man in coach peeks forward, watching. Another passenger starts recording quietly. Jordan knew exactly what was happening, and so did Mia. The implication wasn't subtle. The flight attendant hadn't asked anyone else in first class to verify their identities. No one else had been asked to move. No one else had been questioned. Just them. The cabin, once silent, had turned uneasy. You could feel the weight of every glance. Some passengers exchanged awkward eye contact. A few reached for their phones. In today's world, you don't confront black excellence in public without an audience forming. Silent, maybe, but watching. Cut to a nearby flight attendant approaches, whispering to the first one. The original attendant waves her off dismissively. Another crew member came over, perhaps sensing trouble. She tried to gently intervene, but the first attendant waved her off, as if she had something to prove. And yet the irony? The real power wasn't in that flight attendant's clipboard. It wasn't in her forced authority. The real power was sitting quietly in seat 1A, calmly pulling out his phone to make one simple call. Footage: Jordan typing on his phone, sending a short message. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. Jordan Carter just sent one quiet text to his father. "They're trying to move us. Think it's a race thing." And that one text, that was the beginning of the end for that flight crew. Cut to black screen, slow heartbeat sound effect rising. Jordan didn't raise his voice. He didn't clap back. He didn't make a scene. He didn't need to. Because when you've been taught that your voice is your weapon, your patience is your armor, and your legacy is your protection, you don't argue. You act. With quiet precision, Jordan reached into his backpack, pulled out his phone, and typed just one sentence. "Dad, there's a problem on the plane." That was it. No rant, no drama. Just a simple alert. But that message carried weight. Back at his downtown office, Malcolm Carter was just finishing a morning meeting. He had a cup of espresso in one hand and a proposal draft in the other when his phone buzzed. He looked down, saw Jordan's name, and felt that familiar father's intuition. Something's off. He read the text once, then again, and in that split second, Mr. Carter's demeanor shifted from composed CEO to protective father. Footage: elegant office space. Mr. Carter stands, straightens his blazer, and makes a call as he walks toward the window. Now, understand something. Mr. Carter wasn't just some successful man in tech. He was a major player in the industry. His logistics software powered over 40% of the national inventory systems used by airline freight services, including the one his children were flying on. We're talking tens of millions of dollars in back-end operational support. Systems that track cargo, optimized fuel usage, coordinated layovers. Systems that, if pulled or paused, even for a day, would cause chaos across multiple hubs. This wasn't a man you disrespected. Not in life, not in business, and certainly not through his children. Footage: Mr. Carter tapping through his contact list, selecting President, United Airlines, private line. He lifts the phone slowly to his ear. So Mr. Carter didn't call the customer service hotline. He didn't wait on hold. He didn't write a complaint email. He went directly to the top. The president of the airline, someone who had personally courted Mr. Carter's business, sent him holiday baskets, and had his direct number saved under Malcolm C. The phone rang once, twice, and then click. "Malcolm, is everything all right?" the president asked. Footage: Mr. Carter silhouetted against the city skyline, voice low and calm. "No," Mr. Carter replied, voice measured but cold. "Your flight staff just attempted to remove my children from first class because they didn't look like they belonged there." There was silence on the other end, a sharp breath, the kind of pause that only comes when someone realizes they've messed up badly. Mr. Carter continued. They were in their assigned seats. They have first-class tickets, and they were publicly humiliated while doing absolutely nothing wrong. If this is the kind of experience your airline is providing, then we have a much larger problem than I thought. Now here's where it gets interesting, because this wasn't just about business. This was about respect. Mr. Carter wasn't only invested financially. He was a longtime advocate for diversity in corporate leadership, known for mentoring black youth in tech, and an outspoken critic of systemic bias in customer service models. So when he said, "Fix it now," he wasn't making a request. He was issuing an ultimatum. Footage: on the plane, the original flight attendant returns to the front cabin looking irritated. Moments later, another staff member quickly approaches her, whispering something urgent in her ear. Meanwhile, 30,000 feet in the air, the ripple effect had already begun. Somewhere between clouds and consequences, that plane's crew was about to feel the weight of the call Mr. Carter had just made. A mid-level flight supervisor got a ping on her internal system. Then the pilot's phone lit up in the cockpit. Then the lead in-flight manager was told to stand by for executive instructions. All of it unfolding in real time, while Jordan sat back in his seat, watching the chaos ripple with the quiet poise of someone who knew exactly what power looked like. Mia knew. She knew their father didn't just build a business, he built leverage. And when leveraged correctly, it moves mountains. In less than 10 minutes, the flight crew would be scrambling. Management would be issuing internal directives. And the careers of those who underestimated two black teens in first class were already circling the drain. At 37,000 feet, everything changed. Just 20 minutes after Jordan's text, the cockpit received a priority message. It wasn't standard. It wasn't routine. This was a directive coming from the top, flagged urgent, executive clearance, eyes only. Narrator. The instruction was short, sharp, and clear. Land at nearest major airport immediately. Situation on board requires direct executive response. The captain blinked. Confused, he read it again. He wasn't told there was a medical emergency. No mechanical failure, no turbulence issues. Just land. Now. He radioed for clarification, only to be told, "We'll explain on the ground." That's when the tension really set in. Footage. Lead flight attendant walking down the aisle stiffly, whispering to the original crew member who had confronted Jordan and Mia. Her face drains of color. Meanwhile, in the cabin, whispers were already bubbling like a pot on the verge of boiling over. The mood had shifted. Passengers could feel it. Something was off. Crew members whispered near the galley. Anxious looks. Forced smiles. One of them dropped a tray of drinks and didn't even stop to clean it up. And at the center of it all, Jordan and Mia, still seated, still quiet, still composed, but well aware that power was now in motion. They had done nothing wrong, and yet the plane was descending. Not because of them, but because of what had been done to them. The captain made the announcement. Due to operational directives, we'll be making an unscheduled landing at Charlotte Douglas International. Please remain seated. Now the murmurs weren't whispers. They were full-on conversations. Operational directives? What's going on? Is there a threat? Why Charlotte? Even the frequent flyers in first class looked rattled. As the wheels hit the tarmac, Jordan and Mia exchanged a glance. They didn't know exactly what was happening yet, but they knew it was big. And the moment the doors opened, that's when it all became clear. Footage, jet bridge connecting, two suited airline executives and a security escort waiting at the gate. Standing just beyond the gate were three sharply dressed individuals, airline executives. One man in a navy blazer, one woman in heels and a silver lanyard with VP, Customer Experience, written clearly on her badge. And flanking them, airport security. Not for Jordan and Mia, but for the crew. The door opened, and instead of the crew leading passengers off, two uniformed staff members boarded the plane. They didn't speak to the passengers. They went straight to the lead flight attendant and the crew member who had confronted the siblings. The very woman who had told Jordan and Mia to move to the back was quietly pulled aside. Her protests were hushed. Her voice shook as she tried to justify her actions. But the response from the executive? Just 4 words. Save it for HR. Narrator. Tone softens. Respectful. Jordan and Mia were the next to leave the aircraft. But it wasn't under duress. It wasn't with shame. No, they walked out with dignity. They were met with apologies, bottled water, handshakes, and a full security escort. Not for protection, but for comfort. They were immediately guided into a private lounge area, far from the main terminal. Hot meals, plush seating, warm towels. A corporate representative explained that their bags had been retrieved, a new jet was waiting, and their conference itinerary would be adjusted to accommodate the delay, with a chauffeur on standby at the arrival gate. They sat there quietly, sipping tea, letting the whirlwind settle around them. Still teenagers, still processing, but finally, being treated the way they should have been treated all along. With dignity, with respect, as they earned. They were issued a formal apology letter, vouchers, and a lifetime upgrade status on all future flights with that airline. But more importantly, the airline's president personally video called them to apologize. "Your father is a valued partner," he said. "But more than that, what happened today was unacceptable. Not just because of who he is, but because of who you are. As for the crew who caused the incident, they were debriefed, placed on administrative leave, and eventually terminated. The airline launched a mandatory anti-bias retraining program that very week, not for PR, but because the incident went viral. Back at airline headquarters, the fallout had only just begun. Word of the incident spread like wildfire. Executives were in crisis meetings, HR departments flooded with emails, and someone, somewhere, hit the panic button. The story wasn't just circulating inside the company anymore. It had reached the public, and worse, it had reached investors. Within 24 hours of the incident, a leaked video from a passenger on board had gone viral. In it, you could clearly see the flight attendant dismissing Jordan and Mia, ignoring their boarding passes, and making a comment that would spark outrage across the country. "You people are always pushing it." The backlash was immediate. Hashtag Justice for Jordan and Mia was trending across platforms. Civil rights organizations spoke out. Prominent voices in business, politics, and entertainment publicly condemned the airline's behavior. Suddenly, this wasn't just a story about two teens. It was a spotlight on systemic disrespect Black youth still face, even in spaces they've rightfully earned a place in. Narrator firm the airline moved fast, but not fast enough for some. The head flight attendant, the two cabin supervisors who had backed her, and even the customer service manager who greenlit their removal from the VIP seats were all terminated within 48 hours. They didn't just lose their jobs. Their names were in the internal memo that every employee read, a warning, a message. This is what happens when you forget who we serve. That week, the airline issued a full public apology. The statement read, "We extend our sincerest apologies to the Carter family. What occurred on Flight 782 was an unacceptable breach of our core values and commitment to equality. We are taking full responsibility." But words weren't enough for Mr. Carter, and they weren't enough for the public either. Mr. Carter didn't want revenge. He didn't demand money. He didn't ask for special favors. What he wanted was change. In his own words, "You don't have to punish people to prove a point, but you do have to correct a system that lets it happen in the first place." And that's exactly what happened. Overnight, the airline rolled out sweeping policy reforms. Diversity and anti-bias training, which had previously been optional, was now mandatory for every employee, from janitors to boardroom execs. But it didn't stop there. Promotions across the company were frozen until every manager and department head completed a new certification in inclusive workplace leadership. Recruitment policies were revamped to ensure better representation at every level. And for the first time in the airline's history, they created a diversity oversight board with full authority to audit and recommend disciplinary action company-wide. The company didn't just apologize. It transformed. And Jordan and Mia, the airline wasn't done making amends. Just days after the incident, they sent a private jet, yes, a whole jet, to ensure Jordan and Mia reached their conference in New York in style, without interruption, and without another ounce of disrespect. From the red carpet rolled out on the tarmac, to the in-flight menu custom designed around their favorite foods, it was a small but meaningful gesture. And this time, every crew member greeted them not with suspicion, but with respect. Jordan and Mia didn't just attend that leadership conference, they owned it. Their story became the most talked about topic of the week. And when they shared what had happened on stage, you could hear a pin drop, then thunderous applause. Because they didn't just represent two teenagers who were wronged. They represented every young person who's been underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed because of how they look. Mr. Carter reminded the world that real power doesn't scream. It moves silently, swiftly, and with purpose. And when his children were disrespected, he didn't rage. He restructured. And thanks to that, thousands of employees, future passengers, and young leaders will now experience a better, more respectful version of the world, one where people are seen, heard, and valued. This story isn't just about getting revenge. It's about standing up for dignity. It's about using your voice, or one simple text, to call out injustice and demand better. Jordan and Mia showed the world. You deserve to be treated with respect, no matter your age, race, or background. If you believe in standing up for what's right, hit that like button, Share this story and subscribe for more real-life tales of empowerment. What would you have done if you were Jordan or Mia? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one.